Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Terry Finley, as Matt talked about. And the first thing I wanted to say was to the founders and the creators of Equestricon. I'm so proud of you guys. I remember 2 years ago, I was at Oklahoma at Saratoga, and Dan and Justin and Katie, they got me in a corner on the side of the racetrack, and they told me about their vision for Equestricon, and I was impressed at the very beginning, and just incredible to see the progress that they've made in 2 short years. So I'm sure the future, and I know the future is bright for Equestricon. So thank you to them. So I always hear. I read it on blogs, and I hear about the big horse, right? People talk about I got to get this right now, the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a person. And I think anybody that's in the horse business, I think we all shake our heads, and we say, yeah, that's right. I've never really thought about that, but that is true. And so I take that a step further. I say the outside of a big horse is very, very good for the inside of a person. So, if you look at the engine that drives our business, it really revolves around the big horse. From the breeders and the owners and the sales companies and the trainers and everybody associated in the individual horse, but also the track and the better. So we're all in it to see that big horse, and they're so exciting. And in a couple days, we'll see there are 191, I think, that are entered into the Breeders' Cup, and every one of them is a big horse. And so if you look at the ecosystem of every one of them, right, that's going to walk in the starting gate for the Breeders' Cup, and you start counting the people that those horses have intersected with over the course of their lives, right, from the beginning, the people that plan the mating, right? We run a 2-year-old in the juvenile, and I was thinking about the evolution of that horse, right? There was a pedigree analyst that developed a mating for that mare in 2014, and they bred the mare in 15, and he was foaled in 16. And all the people that intersected with that horse, with the colt that we have, Gunmetal Gray is his name, then they took him to the yearling sales, and a pinhooker actually bought him, and took the colt to Florida. Right, so there's another big group of people, all the grooms and the exercise riders and the admin staff and the van man and the insurance person, and it just goes on and on. It really, really causes you to step back and say, wow. Then they took him to a 2-year-old sale, and there was another sales company involved, and there was another consignor, and there were a bunch of potential buyers, and we ended up buying them this past spring. And we sent him out to Jerry Hollendorfer on the West Coast, and we flew him out. So there was a pilot involved, and there was staff, and he gets out to the West Coast, and there's another big group of people that were involved with him. And then he gets up, and he's all ready to run, and the track becomes involved, right? The staff, the starting gate crew, and on and on and on. So you get my point. There are literally hundreds of people that are involved in every big horse that's going to step into the starting gate on Friday and Saturday. So I'll back up a little bit. And I know Matt talked about the beginning of our partnerships, but I wanted to say something about Cott Campbell, right, who passed away this past Saturday. And, Cott is really the king of partnerships, right? He originated the concept in the late 60s. And, you know, every time you dealt with Cot, you dealt with a person, right, who always had a smile on their face and a good word to put in and a good word to say. And he just did it with so much class, and he was so genuine. And I challenge any of us, right, to look at anyone in our industry that had as big of an impact on our great game as Cot Campbell in the last 50 years. So I'll say to Cot up in heaven, thank you very much. So I know Cot had a bunch of big horses over the years, and if you think about it, and you think of the number of partners and their families that had the pleasure and the blessing, right, to be involved with a big horse as a result of the vision and the acumen of Cot Campbell, it's really great. So thank you to Cot. When I think about the big horses, you know, they don't come along very often. You know, this is a game, and all the trainers, right, talked about it, that on a very regular basis, right, it'll make you feel dumb. It'll make you look dumb, and you feel even worse. You know, you pay a lot of money for a 2-year-old in training, and you run him twice, and he can't really run that well. And you pay a lot of money for at the Keeneland sale, right, for a yearling. Or you breed a good mare to a good stallion, and you don't get the horse you thought you were going to get. So when you do get your hands on a good one, it really takes away a lot of that pain and a lot of that, oh shoot, right, and the bad news. It obliterates that, because when you get a good one, it dominates your life, and it really, the memories that stay with you when you get a good one are really compelling, really are compelling. So I draw the analogy to the NFL draft, and I look at a couple of the good horses, right, that we've been blessed over the years to have, and I think of Twilight Eclipse. Well, I'll talk about the NFL draft, right? We know that there are plenty of kids that go in the first round that are can't-miss prospects, right? They can't miss until they miss, and they can't perform on Sunday afternoon. It happens all the time, and you compare and contrast that the first rounder to the 7th rounder who's an all-pro and who wins the Super Bowl as a result of a great play, and we see it year after year. And so I draw that analogy to the horse business and to some of the horses that we've had and I see other people have. You know, I look at Twilight Eclipse. He cost $1,000 as a yearling. So I compare him to an undrafted rookie who the rookie had to fight and beg and borrow and steal to get invited to training camp. And I think of Awesome Gem, a horse that we ran until he was 9 years old, and he made almost $3 million. And you know, I'd consider him a 6th or 7th round draft choice. You know, he didn't cost a lot of money, he had problems, but in time he just started to run, and he was successful all over the world, and such a blessing to be around him. And I think about what makes the good horses and the big horse, what makes them really different? And I think it's, in addition, right, you have to have the ones that have the athletic ability and the conformation and the pedigree, but they have to have the will to separate themselves, right? That's important. They have to have the will, right, to turn for home at the quarter pole and to separate themselves from their peers. And you just don't see a big horse that doesn't have that incredible will. And we talk about it all the time, right? There's no one in the horse business that has been in a position where they consistently has come up, either bred or bought the big horse year after year after year. And that's good, right? Because we know the big horses come from everywhere. And you see people that are new on the scene in the Derby and the Breeders' Cup every year. And that's the way it should be, and that's the way that it has to be, because it really drives us all to keep coming back to the sales and to keep paying stud fees and to keep trying to get that big one. So I'll talk a little bit about the Derby. We were blessed enough to have a small piece of the Derby winner, Always Dreaming, in 2017. So I'll start the story in 2014. We had a horse by the name of Commanding Curve, and he finished second in the Derby, and he was second to a very good horse. He was a California bred, California Chrome, and he was really bred to an obscure stallion that was bred to an obscure mare, and he was owned by two pretty smart guys on the West Coast. Everybody knows what they called themselves, right? But he was the best on that day. And I remember walking out of Churchill Downs, and I said, and the euphoria of, wow, we just ran second in the Derby. But I also said to myself, there's a very good chance that the Derby gods are not going to let us get back here. And so I walked out saying, God, and that was great, but that's it in terms of luck in the Kentucky Derby. One thing led to another, and we were able, right, with our partners, to get on Always Dreaming. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that go through your mind the last 10 seconds of a race. I know Dale Romans, he talked about that gentleman who was on his deathbed, and he talked about the last 8 seconds, and he was 26 again. I probably felt about 21 instead of 26. But you think about the fact, right, that you got to the mountaintop, right, when you win the Derby. And all those things, you're thankful for the people that, right, have assisted you. You think about going to the races as a kid with your father. But the thing that also comes into your mind is, I got to figure out how to get back here. Like, I got to figure out, what do I need to do to get back in this same spot and to get the next big horse. And so the search and the quest and the journey to get your next big horse, it never stops. It really doesn't. And that's a good thing. And I never want to be in a position where our team is in a spot where we're not on that hunt and on that quest, right, to at least have a chance to get the next big one, because they dominate. So I'll end. I just want to show you a video. Actually, they should have put a picture up. Yeah, so that's a pretty cool thing. But I can tell you, very quickly after that, I was thinking, I got to figure out how to get this trophy up again. And as I said, it really dominates all of us. So let me talk about 2009. Talk about a big horse, right? We had a horse by the name of Macho again. And, right, he had a good 3-year-old year in 2008. He was... He won the Derby trial, and he was second in the Preakness, and he won the Jim Dandy. And he came back in 2009, had a really good year, first part of the year, ended up winning the Stephen Foster Grade 1. So we ran second in the Whitney up at Saratoga. And we flew him back to Churchill. And right towards the end of the meet, all the talk was on a really good filly, Rachel Alexander. She was a 3-year-old, and of course she was a filly. And the owners, all the good people at Stone Street, they took their name on the Woodward Stakes, which is at the end of the Saratoga meet, right, going 1 1/8 against older boys, which is almost unheard of, right? You're like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. But they did it. They were sports people. I remember Jess Jackson. He was a sportsman. So we turned around and we flew our colt right back up to Saratoga. And we're always open, right? If you don't love competition, right, you don't need to be in the business. And we're always up for a good duel. So we wanted to take a shot at a big-time filly, probably one of the best fillies in the history of our industry. So I really think it turned out to be, right, the best race ever at Saratoga. And I think that it's the best call ever. If you see Tom Durkin around, you can ask him about that. I think Tom does as well. And it was just a fantastic afternoon for a lot of people, from the owners and trainers in their industry, to the track, to the town of Saratoga, to the bettors, and everybody else that's associated with our business. So we can see now the start. But I will tell you one, I'll preface it by this. We, at the half-mile pole, I just figured, right, that we weren't firing. And I remember distinctly at Saratoga, we had all of our partners, and we were in front of the big screen. And I remember I shifted my gaze. I couldn't see Macho again at the back of the pack because he was out. He was probably 8 or 10 lengths off the pace, and they were focused on our Rachel Alexander. So I turned my attention to Rachel. I said, all right, we're not firing, but I want to see history made. And I'll never forget the electricity that afternoon at Saratoga at the beginning of September. And it really is the epitome of a big horse and a collection of our big horse. But the star that afternoon, I think you'll see in a couple minutes. So we can run the tape.
They're in the gate. And they're off. Past the point on the outside. The tear down toward the rail. Rachel Alexander is right up there with them. And Cool Coleman on the outside. So they race into the first turn here. Rachel Alexander will duel with Datera. On the far outside, past the point is right there. And in behind, Cool Coleman. A break of 3. Back to It's a Bird, another 3. Back to Bulls Bay, who's on hold early on here. Asiatic Boy, and another 7 to Macho again, who trails the field. Oh, the first quarter was 22 4/5 seconds. There'll be no free ride for Rachel Alexandra. They're making her work for every step today. Datera has sent her through a punishing opening quarter mile. Past the point on the outside, runs along in 3rd. In behind them, Cool Coleman is 4th. It's a Bird 5th on the outside in Bulls Bay. 46 2 was the half mile. Calvin Burrell was able to slow that pace down just a little bit, but they move into the far turn. There's a half mile to go. Rachel Alexandra still holding that lead. Past the point, trying to get to her. The lead is now a length. On the inside, it is Cool Coleman running in 3rd. It's a Bird is 4th. Asiatic Boy is launching a bit from the back of the pack, and Macho again is firing too. They're coming to the top of the stretch. It is still the filly in front. A dramatic stretch drive awaits in the Woodward Stakes. On the outside, here's Bulls Bay and Calvin Morrell imploring his filly for more. And Rachel Alexandra holds on to the lead. Bulls Bay is 2nd. Macho again is making a tremendous run for the back of the pack. Rachel Alexandra, Macho again. They're coming down to the finish. It's going to be desperately close. Here's the wire. Rachel won. She is indeed Rachel Alexandra the Great, beating Macho again here. And farther back, Bulls Bay was 3rd. The time was 1:48.1. Rachel Alexandra raises the rafters here at the Spa.
So I've always thought that was a pretty cool race, and I think sooner or later, I think we're going to get up. I don't know how it's going to change, but we're going to get up one day. And so I'll reiterate that the outside of a big horse is really, really good for the inside of a person. I totally agree. So thank you very much.